Welcome and Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
I mean, it's gonna be doubly Lag BaOmer, that
In what sense?
on their the fact that
Oh,
persons died on Lag BaOmer, and it's like
right.
they're gonna, yeah,
Well, except that Lag BaOmer is supposed to represent
I know,
when the plague was lifted, not when it got worse.
right.
So
So, but didn't some rabbi die on Lag BaOmer though? I thought I read,
Bar Yochai.
yeah.
I don't know. That's not what I heard, but maybe
Okay, I read it off of CNN, I think.
okay. Well, maybe
But
so.
that doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
I mean, I know that he's associated. Maybe he did. I don't
Hmm.
know. I thought it had more to do with, maybe it was when he was released. I actually don't know the direct connection between Shimon Bar Yochai and Lag BaOmer.
Because
I
that's where
looked.
they were all heading, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
Miron,
right.
Miron, correct. The other piece is that if you look at the working it out of the Sfirot, like the first week is Chesed and the second week is Gvura, etc. We're on the week of Hod, and today happens to be the combination of Hod and Hod. The two are together at this particular point. And the translation that I have says, Hod is humility. And that's very interesting. So today is a day when we focus on how humble our humility really is, and whether or not, etc. So just interesting that Lag BaOmer turns out to be that particular combination. So, all right. Well, well, well. I mean, we are going to continue now with the Torah Temimah on this particular verse, on verse 9. So we're digging deep into this verse. And let me just take care of something here. All right. So we've done two of them, and what to realize that what category of woman does this include, and it includes a na'ara and a bogeret, and whether she is betrothed or actually married. So then we had to do with whether or not her status, whether she was married to a Kohen or a Levi or Yisrael, or even beyond that, marriages that are not permissible at all. And does this law apply to her? And the answer is yes, it does. So here we go. Ki techel liznot. And this is where we're discussing exactly what we mean by znut here, which we know means to go astray, to be astray. If she starts to go astray. So the question here that they're discussing in Sanhedrin is, Yachol, it's possible, afilu chilila et haShabbat. Maybe we mean that she broke the Shabbos, right? And that this, because it's not describing it. And the answer is Talmud Lomar. For this reason, scripture is explicit with ki techel liznot, and they're understanding, okay, that techel can also mean profane. Remember, it can be from lahatchil, but here it could well mean that it's talking about profane. And so they're taking this word techel as mean profane by way of licentiousness, by that kind of thing. Bechilul shebiznut hakatuv medaber, that we're talking about her profaning herself through zanut. And of course, that has to do with sexual immorality. Hakatuv medaber, the scripture is referring to. So we know that if she breaks the Shabbat, the punishment, by the way, I think we're going to see this in a moment, is different, because the punishment for this particular sin, as we know, is burning. But in the case of Shabbat, it's actually stoning. So, all right, let's go to see where it is here. Finding the place. Here it is, I believe. Nun Zayin. Let me make sure. Yeah. Sorry, I want to make sure I have the right place. Yes, Nun Zayin. Gemara, in the Gemara, Mefaresh, it explains the Atya Kerabi Shimon sphere. That this particular opinion represents the opinion and the position, the halachic position of Rabbi Shimon. Desfirale, because he holds Sreifa Chamura Miskila. So there's a discussion in the Gemara when it comes to these four different kinds of capital punishment. There's no question on the one hand that stoning and burning are more serious than decapitation and strangulation. That there's no question about. The question then becomes, is stoning more serious than burning, or vice versa? And Rabbi Shimon holds that burning is considered a more serious punishment than stoning. Okay, so remember, she is burned, and violation of Shabbat, intentional violation of Shabbat that is proved, etc., etc. It's a capital offense, and the punishment is stoning. V'hava amina. So we might have thought the af de ba'alma mechalel Shabbat b'skila, that even though in general one who violates the Shabbat, who profanes the Shabbat, is punished by stoning, but in this case, mipnei kedushat kahuna, because of the holiness of the priesthood, chayevet sreifa, that she would be facing burning, af bechilul Shabbat, even if she did profane the Shabbat. Kamash malan, and for this reason, we have this particular interpretation. So I hope you understand the argument that's going on here, okay, that if we consider burning more serious than stoning, then as a daughter of a priest, and she violated the Shabbat, she gets burning rather than stoning. And the answer is that is not the case, that it's strictly in a case of znut, of the licentiousness, that she would get, or the lewd behavior, that she would be burnt, and not if she violated the Shabbat. She would still get stoned, which is lighter, at least in terms of its implications.
Well, my thought about that and I could be wrong, but just that Shabbat, when you violate the Shabbat, you are sinning against God. But when you, with the sexual, with the affairs and things like that, you could be sinning against people and God. So that makes it like another level. I mean, I could be completely wrong about that, and I guess there are sexual sins that don't involve other people, but.
Well, no. But the point is, if it's consenting, right, as opposed to, and I think in general they're talking about consensual acts. I don't know if that. I mean, obviously it does affect another person, but
I thought you were talking about going astray.
Going astray here means, remember the very first comment we had, that this refers strictly that if she is either engaged or married, that if she's single, this law does not apply.
Yeah.
So going astray there means having sex outside of her marriage or outside of her engagement.
Right, and I thought that's what we were talking about.
Right, but it could be consensual. It could be that the man she's having this with is someone she wants to. He's just not her husband or her.
So you're saying that it doesn't really affect him, it just affects her.
Well, no, I'm saying it doesn't affect him necessarily. It's true he's sinning with her, but motivating it is his own behavior.
I just got in here, but I don't understand why this isn't the same issue as adultery. And I also think that we need to see that this always goes on the woman, and the man is equally involved here. When women are subject either to their husband or to their father. There's no true consent involved.
We're talking about consent outside of her marriage. She has a
Oh,
love.
how is that different than adultery?
It is adultery. It is indeed adultery. The difference is
We're
that,
talking about this as being worse or something.
yes, because what's happening is that the very priesthood itself and her father's reputation is, and Rashi gives that example, okay, that people will say, that's the father of this woman who did this. And so what happens is it also debases the priesthood, whereas simply an act of adultery does not debase the priesthood. So either, and you look at the priesthood, I mean, it's a matter of meditating on the significance of the priesthood and how it represents a nexus between human beings and the divine and their creator.
I didn't understand, Rabbi, about burning, because we're not supposed to touch our bodies. We're godlike. I mean, God made us in His image, and you're not supposed to hurt your body by cremating it or burning it. I don't understand.
Okay, we're not talking about cremation here. Ironically, or maybe not ironically, intentionally, what they did, burning here. Okay, remember I've explained in a previous session that when this took place, the person was no longer conscious, right? That these horrendous types of death, the capital punishment, were done when the person was no longer conscious because it was preceded by strangulation. The person was unconscious when what they
And
did.
it wasn't burning the body like cremation. It was
right. So Harlan may have missed that lesson. Okay, go ahead, Lauren.
well, you had talked about hot lead being poured into their mouth to
That's
kill
what
them.
they did. Correct.
So it's kind of an inner burning, that kills you, but it doesn't cremate your whole body.
No. So in fact, the body, the outer body, is presumably somewhat intact, if not intact. Okay. So, Judith, you feel at least I've given you some sense of the significance of the difference? I may not have satisfied you, but at least I think those are along the lines of why this is a more serious thing. But a man is a man.
I get that. It's just that it always goes on to the woman, and there's not a recognition that the woman has so much less agency in this situation.
They're both guilty.
Wait a
They're
second.
both guilty. It's adultery.
It's not, okay. That's not the issue here, okay? The issue here is perhaps the very fact that she is either, that she does have a husband who should be taking care of her, okay? I mean, there are a lot of people involved when these sorts of things happen. The level of guilt may be much decreased, but when you say it's always about the woman, it has to do with the status of the woman. A man can be married or unmarried. Doesn't matter. A man can be single or married if he has relations outside of his own marriage or not married with a married woman. If he has relations with a married woman, he is committing adultery. He can be single. With a woman, if she's single, she's not committing adultery. So
I guess when I'm saying this is a whole thing about a woman,
yes.
What about the sons of the priests?
What about the sons of the priests who do this? If they commit adultery, they're going to be stoned. They're going to be stoned.
Well, haven't we only been talking about women?
Whatever the punishment is for adultery, okay? Adultery is a capital offense. It's one of the 10 commandments. And essentially all the 10 commandments, except, and that of course throws into question the very last commandment, because it's hard to say that that's a capital offense. But nevertheless, pretty much the other 9 are clearly capital offenses.
But if it's the son of a priest commits adultery,
yes.
Wouldn't that be equitable for him to be burned?
It would seem that way, but the Torah is mandating that he is going to be killed. He and is going to be killed in a different way. I mean, look, we're just skirting the surface of this particular thing, okay? And one has to at least look in culture how women, you know, for example, that in certain cultures, the honor of a sister is paramount. The fact, perhaps the very fact that a woman doesn't have quite the agency of a man makes it even more heinous. But the woman herself, if she, and I assume they're talking here about a consensual act. But the point is the man isn't going to walk away.
But one more thing I want to bring up, and I know this is modern sensibilities, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean there's no
Equity?
well, it's not about so much just equity, but in a patriarchal culture,
Yes.
when there is a huge power difference,
Yes.
the act of being, consenting has less meaning because maybe she agreed, but her agreement may have been, part of the pressure of her lack of power.
Again,
And that does play a part in, sometimes the intention in your mind of intentional acts and people who are in a oppressed state in society. Like, for instance, if you were an enslaved person
I understand.
and you agreed to have
No.
sex with your master.
Right. No. I get it. I really did. I got it. You didn't, I mean, it was fine for you to explain it further, but I do get your point. I think we get your point. Look, this takes a lot of understanding of the culture, why the culture developed the way it did in particular, okay? I don't claim to be an expert on this particular culture. I know that it's quite possible that, well, part of it is that the word, that the word for prostitute in Hebrew is nafka, okay? The word nafak is to go out. It means to go out. And the assumption is because apparently within that culture, there was basically women associated with women. They're not like our culture where women and men are intermingling constantly. There was a sense of modesty that men basically associated with men unless it was their own family and their wife or their sister. But generally speaking, it was not considered appropriate for a man and for men and women who did not have a formal relationship to be associating with each other. There was a general sense of modesty regarding this because they knew that the possibilities of it leading to lewdness was high. I mean, we live in a culture, we can criticize this culture, and I'm not saying that the points that are made don't have validity, but we don't look at our own culture and what's really, really ugly about it.
We don't.
I don't know that we do.
Of course we do.
Those of
I
us
think
who are
we
here
do.
do.
I don't
Yes, and
know.
I do. And,
I'm glad you do.
this is like the Taliban. Women don't go out.
Yes, it is like the Taliban. I agree.
And we can study it as that's an interesting thing that happened then.
Yes.
But if it is an interesting thing that happened then, but there are aspects of it.
Judith, what is the takeaway for us? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. It's certainly the question I am not in any way suggesting that we should move to a Taliban-like society. But certainly if we're going to judge that society, let's make sure we have all our facts, in a row.
So, I mean, I preface what I said by admitting that I was using modern sensibilities to critique this ancient way of doing things.
Right.
But I do think that that this has to be allowed in the discussion.
Absolutely.
In order to, like, anything that we can understand about what was happening then, it's helpful for us to feel understood about how we feel with our modern sensibilities and why we feel that way. And that just kind of helps us bridge it even more.
I couldn't agree with you more, Lauren. I could not agree with you more. I agree. I think, we are living in our own times. That is clearly part of what I think drives the oral law. Okay? That's what drives it, is that we live in a different culture. We have to sort out what is better about, quote, quote, better about our culture than this culture that we might be describing here. On the other hand, we need to look at what we need to critique about our own culture. I mean, the way sex is peddled these days, okay? I realize because of our own sensibilities, we don't think it's anything, I mean, okay, I think perhaps some of us here feel that's inappropriate, but the general culture seems to support it quite well and doesn't seem to have a problem. I mean, sex is a big industry. It's a moneymaker. And it's disgusting. I think it actually kills people. I don't think people realize it. I think they
I don't
realized it
think,
back then.
I don't think God had any problem with prostitution. It's a profession, as long as you're single.
I'm not a woman, but I can only imagine what it does to a sense of self-esteem for a woman. But
There's not prostitution in a vacuum anyway. There's the
Right.
industry, and same thing with, pornography and things like that. The industries are plagued with sexism and abuse and drug abuse and all kinds of issues. That doesn't mean there aren't, maybe exceptions to that, but it's not something that's just in a vacuum.
Right.
It's got all kinds of context about relationships to how you feel about yourself and how you feel about, people and God and all kinds of things. It's not just like,
Absolutely.
it's not the same kind of profession as like being an accountant.
I agree, Lauren. I think that calling it a profession is trying to make it sound, acceptable, etc. And I think
Bankers used to be vilified also,
yeah,
and lawyers.
actually they still,
Lawyers still are.
they
Yeah.
still- yes.
Lawyer.
Yeah, but something, still, it's not the same. It's not the same. I mean, look, we could spend a lot of time discussing that, and it's not that it isn't important. Let me at least finish this particular thing. And look, the fact that we're raising these particular issues, I think is valid. I think it's good for us, to take a look at this. And I don't have any problem, with the critique that's going on or the concern. I need you to be aware of it. I'm not trying to somehow palliate or treat this, from an infantile kind of way. This raises real, complicated issues. So let's just take a look at this. So we're saying that this particular comment, going back in a very different direction, is only applies to the person who would hold Rabbi Shimon's point of view. But he considers, and whoever's doing this, could they mute, please? Okay. I'm not, looking at who's not muted and stuff.
Just go.
Okay, thank you. So he says, okay, so there's why we have this particular statement, because if you consider stoning more serious than burning, then in fact she is now sort of off the hook if she commits adultery, if she violates the Shabbat. That's what this is about. Okay. And he just says, take a look at Nun Tet. That is, one of his commentary down here, Nun Tet. Okay, but one can look into this more deeply. One can sort of look carefully at this. That why would one even consider afilu chilala et haShabbat? Why are we even raising that question? Okay. Because I mean, this is based on saying, well, you might make a mistake and think, that when it says, znut, it's including Shabbat, and he says ki techel liznut. He says the verse itself leads one to suggest that it has to do with lewdness and immorality, that it has nothing to do with, why would we even think it's a question of violating Shabbat? The Yesh Lomar, and so he's raising a difficulty on this very issue, right? The Yesh Lomar, and one could respond by saying, Mishum, there's a reason, Delif Amim, because there are times, Matzinu Hapa'al Zana, that we find this verb Zana, that's the word, right, Liznot, Yunach gam al sha'ar averot, that it also refers to other transgressions, levad znut, besides immorality. Kamo, and here we go, it gives an example. Bezanu acharei Elohehem, and they went astray after their gods. So they committed idolatry. Another example, Vezana acharei Elohei Nechar. Again, they went astray after other foreign gods. And another example, Ki zanita me'al Elohecha. So these are all basically examples of idolatry. What they went astray after their gods, meaning the pagan gods. Okay, sorry, I skipped the line. That you have gone astray from your God, from Elohim, and that's Hosea. Kamashmalan, and for that reason, we can say, right? It teaches us the benekeva, okay, that when it comes to the female, have a stam znut, when it talks about znut without any other descriptive, znut mamash, it is talking specifically about sexual immorality. So again, I mean, just to finish out the analysis here, and I'm going to stop the share and give you a chance to comment some more if you'd like. Yeah, Golda.
So is idolatry also is going astray also going into the do you get burned? Do you get the fire?
Oh, idolatry?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I have to look and see what the punishment is. Lauren, if you want to do a quick Google check and ask what, in Jewish law, what's the punishment for?
There seems like it should be stoning, but
it does, at any rate.
Well, if that's what it is, I mean, or offering, running, if you go astray, if that's what zonat really, or zonat means,
Znut, yeah.
Znut, okay, means, then if that would make sense.
Yes, it goes even a little bit further. You may be realizing this yourself as well, but as a matter of fact, the idea of idolatry is actually related also to adultery, meaning the betrayal. That I think essentially when you're married to someone and they go and have intimacy with someone else, you feel betrayed.
That's true. We are married to God. I mean,
yes. Well,
literally.
but here, okay, he quoted Hosea, and the basic situation of Hosea is told by God, and I realize one could be cynical about it, to marry this prostitute Gomer, so that Hosea can actually feel the sense of betrayal that God feels when the Jewish people go after other gods. And so there is this real connection between idolatry and, as I said, adultery.
Does it mean also, Rabbi?
I'm sorry.
Does it mean also, Rabbi, that not only statues, wooden statues, but I heard the people saying, money is my God.
Yes.
Not God, money is my God. I don't care about God. That's another factor.
Yes.
Okay, so Yecheskel Kaufman, who was a great scholar in the previous century and made an analysis on the history of the religion of Israel, deep study of it, points out that worshiping stones and statues and things is actually fetishism. It's not idolatry. And idolatry, Harlan, is exactly what you're talking about. It's when you make something other than God, your prime focus of loyalty and expectation of ultimate redemption and stuff like that. So the truth is that idolatry is alive and well here in the 21st century. Lauren, did you get an answer to that?
No, it's complicated. I'm trying because I can't find something to click on because they all talk about capital punishment without distinguishing between different types.
Okay.
So it's, I haven't given up, but I just haven't found it.
Well, for
Sounds like
sure,
a thing for the weekend.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's burning. I'm pretty sure it's not burning. Okay.
I think it's stoning, but
If it's
Dang.
anything, if it's any one of the more, it's either going to be strangulation or stoning. And I think it would be, it would make more sense. I just don't believe it's burning. I really don't. Okay, we're going to have to quit at this particular point. And thank you all very much. Have a Shabbat Shalom. I'm going to excuse myself as I prepare to get my hair cut.
Golda warned us about this verse.
I did. It was
He
going to
did,
be
and
all
that's why
sorts of stuff.
And as
Well-
some of you know, I go for the bait, right? So I
Well, we
really-
could have just started with that.
Oh, man, who
I
doesn't?
thought it was
A
helpful.
whole
I
week
think-
on it.
I think we need to be able to confront these things and it tests our own ability to be open, right, and not be prejudgmental. So
Right.
Up front we do.
Yeah.
Okay. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Take
See
care.
y'all
Shabbat
probably